Hey everyone, it's Holmes from Home Story Books, and I'm here today to do the My Pleasure book tag. I was tagged by Cassie from Bookish Four Eyes, and I'm finally getting around to this tag. The original creator is Steve Partridge, and the idea for this tag is you think of a few of life's great pleasures and pair them with a book. Think. A book that made you think hard. Heartberries by Terese Marie Myatt. I've done a full review of this, which I will link down below, but there's a passage in this book that really made me think and actually shifted my perspective considerably. She said, "Self-worth is a white invention. It asks people to further separate one person from another. It asks people to assess their values and implies people have worth. It seems like identity capitalism." Since reading that paragraph, I've told a lot of people about it, discussed it with a lot of people, and I think of it almost daily. Myatt's writing is so valuable to me, and I can't wait till she writes another book. Love, a book that broke or mended your heart. A book about love. I couldn't help but go with the classic for this one, and it is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. My mom watched both the 2005 film and the 5-hour BBC miniseries rather abundantly while I was growing up, so I'm really familiar with the story, but only read the book with a friend of mine a few years ago. Austen is a master of subtlety, sass, and observations. From the infamous first line of the book, where she talks about men in possession of a certain fortune wanting a wife, she then proceeds to talk about the women in the story. Blink and you'll miss it, but she's such a wonderful writer, she still, to this day, has the young men in college classes arguing she's not a writer of romance novels in order to save their pride. There's a cool idea for a video that I'm sure has been done to death before. I don't know if she's the original creator of the enemies to lovers trope, but she certainly makes it work in this classic novel. What I love about the book versus the film or the BBC miniseries is how you get so much more of an insight into Darcy's personality and his own thoughts, which adds another level of insight to the text. Eat. A book that nourishes you. Easily, I could go with any of the recipe books I've featured on my channel. Thug Kitchen cookbooks are great, and they are some of my most used cookbooks since I purchased the first one about a year ago. But a book that nourished me would be The Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. She writes about food and curry and dal and naan bread in a way that makes me hungry. Pun aside, her writing is so rich and so textured that I feel like I can chew on her words. Lahiri makes me miss a home I've never been to, makes loneliness tangible, and makes the commonplace a little melancholy, all with a sweep of her writer's hand. I love her work and aim to read more of it soon. Laugh, a book that brought you a little comic relief. The book that immediately came to mind for this was Motorcycles and Sweetgrass by Hayden. The opening passages talk about a girl going to residential school or boarding school, and a trickster figure says she's leaving him for her new boyfriend, Jesus. I mean, you gotta be there, but also it's really funny, and I'm going to love it so much and laugh so much if I giggled as much as I did on the first page. Sex, a book that explores or contains sexuality that doesn't make you cringe. For this one, I wanted to try and focus on a book that explores both sexuality and sex in terms of gender identity and expression. So I went with She of the Mountains by Vivek, Shraya. In it, a young gay man falls in love with a female co-worker and starts to question himself and who he surrounds himself with. He looks at labels used in the queer community and how those labels can sometimes be used to isolate people and to put their spectrums of sexualities into narrow little boxes. One of my favorite sentences from the book is, "Ironically, queer meant whole." But above all, this book is a love story, and I adore Shraya's writing as always. It's tender, full of folklore and intimate moments, one of which is portrayed in a beautiful lithographic that if I were monetized, YouTube would demonetize me. It's a great, sensual book, and I hope I've enticed you enough to pick it up. Rest, a book that gave you peace, reflection, or just calms you down. This was one of the more difficult prompts to choose a book for. The one I went with was I Am China by Xiaolu Guo, which is about a translator in London and the letters she's translating between an exiled Chinese musician named Jian and his girlfriend Mu. Because of the way the translator was given the materials in a stack, we get to read those letters in the same mismatched order, and there's something really satisfying about reading Guo's work. She's one of my favorite authors, and every time I sit down to read a book of hers, I know that I'm going to be so enraptured in her book that nothing else matters. Her writing is part cynical, part romantic, part poet, and part hopeful. Reading her work is like watching a little tea flower blossom in hot water, and I read it all the way till the acknowledgements. I really didn't want it to end. Experience, a book that introduced you to a new subject or shifted your perspective. The last book I'd love to talk about is Paper Teeth by Lauralyn Chow. This is about a Chinese-Canadian immigrant growing up in Canada, half-heartedly attending Chinese school on Saturdays, but really wanting to spend the day watching cartoons. This is a short story collection based around a family, and generally each story has one or more multiple perspectives from everyone in the family. What I love is that these short stories are named after dishes in a Chinese restaurant. So one story will be called wonton soup and crispy skinned duck and dumplings, and that made me happy and hungry and nostalgic. I picked this one for perspective because it shifts not only in different points of view, but also in time. And it's a great book that I think more people should read. That's it. That's all for this tag video today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.